But what we don't recognize when it comes to hyper independence is the root and what it is essentially doing and the chaos that is causing in our lives. And it's poisonous. It's poisonous and it's cancerous, right? But before we go into calling that thing out and trying to pull it out, let's dive deeper into this topic because your girl is not here to just kind of like drive by you. If you're familiar with me, I'm not here to condemn you. I'm not here to make you feel bad about yourself or like you're the worst person on earth. No, I'm here to help you recognize that thing for what it is so we can begin working on it. Today's episode, I'm so excited about. It's not just because of the contents of the episode itself and where I know the direction that we're going in. No, it's because of how passionate I am about this subject. This subject of hyper independence, you know that meme that says, nobody told me nothing, nobody told me nothing. This is how it was for me when I first learned about hyper independence, meaning within myself. I would love to say that I learned about it from, social media and things like this. No, I actually learned first and foremost that I was a hyper independent person when I went to therapy years ago. And from that first exposure to understanding that the consequences that I was dealing with was because of my hyper independence, it then turned into this full blown investigation and this journey that God took me through into understanding hyper independence and how it was impacting my life and how I needed to release it. And for those of you that are new here, my name is Michelle. I'm a faith-based mindset coach. I am also the creator of the Beauty for Ashes program. And what it focuses on is teaching women how to surrender that survival strength and embrace divine empowerment. So we focus very heavily on going through a cycle in 21 days where we break that survival cycle. And hyper independence for the majority of the ladies that are in my tribe is at the top, okay, of what has put us in that survival cycle. But we're dealing with the consequences of being in that survival cycle, but we hardly ever recognize that that's the reason we're going through what we're going through. We may say it's the hyper independence, but we don't say that it's coming from a survival cycle place. Instead, you might blame people. You might say, well, if I had this kind of partner, if I had this kind of father, this kind of mother, or if somebody did this and they told me this, etc. We have all of these reasons and rationalizations as to why we're in the situation that we're in. What I'm here to tell you, quit all that. Today, this is about really facing it. And the way I'm going to help you face it is because you need to understand the importance of releasing hyper independence because it's a scarcity mindset. Now, we know for the most part, there's the abundance mindset and there's scarcity mindset. So first of all, let's focus on hyper independence and what hyper independence even is, right? Let's start there. Hyper independence basically means is that you're the type of person that you are independent to the point where even if it's harmful to you, you're independent. Now, from a spiritual standpoint, right? Because I'm a faith-based mindset coach. From a spiritual standpoint, God will call that pride. And what does the Bible say about pride? Okay. Pride comes before destruction. So hyper independence in itself is rooted in pride. Is rooted in this idea that you can do it all by yourself and you essentially need no one. That is pride within itself. Now, the reason this can be supported is because when you become so self-sufficient, so self-reliant, and then on top of that, the people around you, they reinforce this negative idea about you because what they constantly do is if they need help, if they need support, you're the go-to person. So this is in a sense like it inflates your head to really think like, man, everybody needs me. I don't need people, right? It really can put you in that kind of a mindset. But what we don't recognize when it comes to hyper independence is the root and what it is essentially doing and the chaos that is causing in our lives. And it's poisonous. It's poisonous and it's cancerous, right? But before we go into calling that thing out and trying to pull it out, let's dive deeper into this topic because your girl is not here to just kind of like drive by you. If you're familiar with me, I'm not here to condemn you. I'm not here to make you feel bad about yourself or like you're the worst person on earth. No, I'm here to help you recognize that thing for what it is so we can begin working on it. Now, I do want to say this. Part of why I want to talk about this is because, I'm on my own glow up journey. right? And we're all in different stages when it comes to glowing up, self-love, self-care, all of those different things. And for me, one of the things that's a big priority to me in my glow up journey is my self-care, right? Well, everything I do comes from the standpoint of my self-care, my mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, all of that. But if I'm doing everything from that standpoint and I'm doing everything from that place, self-care, hyper independence makes it very difficult to have self-care. Because if it must be, it's up to me, right? If you're not able to delegate, if you're not able to trust people, if you're not able to do all of those different things, how can you properly take care of yourself? And how can you properly give yourself room to heal and do all the different things that you need to do? Just rest within itself. Like, how are you giving yourself the opportunity to rest? You can't. So, for me, in terms of my personal journey, the more I desired self care, the more I had to be willing to let go of my hyper independence. But what letting it go revealed to me is just how deep rooted there were certain things inside of me that were the reason why I was not able to let that hyper independence go. And it's going to be the same for you because hyper independence has a certain value to you. It has a certain meaning to you. It's more than sentimental value. You are attached to this thing. And there's a reason that you're attached to this thing. I'll tell you this, and I may have mentioned it in the first episode, but if not, I'll mention it here. I remember the first time that the Lord told me to give him my strong, independent woman self, right? My hyper independence. Yeah, I think I did mention it. It was the scariest thing to me. And the reason it was so scary is because why would you want that from me? And when he asked me for it, that was the moment that I realized that this was an idol. This mindset of mine, this idea of who I was and why I needed to be this way, that was him exposing to me how much this was an idol. So really, I'm believing in God, but truly who is the God of my life is myself, because ultimately I'm not even willing to get out of the way so that the Holy Spirit can come in and do the things that he needs to do. So I had to go through a serious process with the Lord to release this thing and let it go. So why are you not willing to let go of that hyper independence? Why is this something so strong and, connected to you? Well, for most people, you're not going to think about what it means to you in terms at a deeper level. You're going to think about all the people that you can't trust and all the people that are the reason that make you feel like this is who you need to be. Immediately, that's where the mind goes. But that within itself is a scarcity mindset, because essentially what you're saying, scarcity mindset, what that means is that you are focused on lack, meaning what you see and everything is lack. Now, hyper independence in itself, why is that a form of a scarcity mindset? Because what you're essentially saying is that you lack people that you can count on, you lack people that you can trust, you lack adequate resources. Basically, you lack, you lack, you lack, you lack. And because you lack, you're the only person now. You're the only person that has it. You're the only person that has it figured out. You're the only person that can be counted on. You're the only person that can be trusted. You're the only person that's going to show up. So, because you are the only person, you have to take responsibility. So, imagine if you were planning your own wedding and you are in this hyper independent mindset where you believe that the only person that can put a wedding together the way that you want it is you. So you're in the kitchen trying to put food together. You are trying to decorate. You're at the florist. You're at this point, you're trying to drive yourself to the wedding and be the bride in the back at the same time. You see how crazy that is? But to the person that's being hyper independent, we don't think of it as crazy. We just think if it must be, it's up to me, right? That's the mindset that you're in when you're operating from this place. But it's such a deep rooted form of scarcity that what it essentially does is constantly putting us on this hamster wheel where essentially like running towards things, thinking that we're the only one that could get it done, but we're jumping from one hamster wheel to the next. So it's like, in order to keep this hamster wheel going, we're on this one. And then, oh my gosh, that needs to be done. I jump on this one. That needs to be done. I jump on this one. And depending on how hyper independent you are and how well in the environment that you're in, and how social you are is how much of a bigger impact that hyper independence has on your life. Because before you know it, let's say you're in the workplace, right? You're at work. Before you know it, everybody in that workplace is bringing their work to your desk, not necessarily to do it, but to look over. You have your own work that you need to do. You just started the day. Before you can even get into starting your day, what begins happening? Okay. Well, this person comes over. Hey, I want your opinion on this. This person comes over. Hey, can you take a look at this for me? Hey, I need your help on this. I need your help on that. And before you know it, everybody comes to you because you are the superhero. You are the star of the show. And you would like to say, right? Because it's so difficult to look at ourselves and take accountability for the environments that we created around ourselves. We begin to say things like, well, why does everybody think it needs to be me? Why aren't they looking at everybody else? Why can't they consider other people? Because you're the person that decided to put this S on your chest. And you might say, well, I didn't put that S on their chest for them. I put it on my chest for me. Yes. But who is going to see a superhero and not want to utilize the power of a superhero? You follow? So, in a sense, what has happened is our humanity is not seen. And you're probably in a stages in your life right now where you feel isolated, you feel alone, you feel unloved. See, that's the truth of the matter when you really get into the nitty gritty of this thing. You feel unloved, you feel unsupported, you feel like you're just a tool, a vessel in people's lives. Why? Because people are utilizing you in the only way that you know how to show up, which is by being the strongest person there, the strongest person in the room. And I know, trust me, I know, I've been there. My intentions when I was operating in hyper independence was never to give off the energy that I'm the strongest person in the room. It was never that. I was never thinking about it from that standpoint. It was just that I was so convinced that if it must be, it's up to me, that I felt the need to figure things out because I did not believe, hear this, I did not believe that anybody was going to care about me and my situation enough to actually give it the amount of attention that I needed it to get. And this thing, whatever it is, was so vitally important to me, especially when it comes to succeeding, right? When we're dealing with success and failure, it was so important to me for it to succeed that I was not willing to put it in the hands of anybody else or to think that people were going to care about me enough to ensure that I succeed, right? Now, number one, that's a problem. Because yes, there may be some truth to that because you're sitting there probably saying to yourself, well, what's wrong with that? Of course, people aren't going to care about what I care about as much as me. But there are people that love you enough that even though they may not be able to give it the amount of energy that you would like, the amount of energy that they are able to give is going to be such a breath of fresh air to whatever it is that you have going on, to whatever it is that you're doing. And we rob ourselves of the ability to build community, number one, because in order to have a community, people have to contribute, right? One of my favorite movies, I don't know if you guys have seen it, is the Avatar, the new one, The Way of the Water, right? And there is this scene where they have to leave the forest where they originally were from the first Avatar, and because the other guys are after them, and they find their way to another, let's say, location where there are other avatars there. And these avatars live a completely different life. These people live in the water. They catch their food in the water, they do all that. So the original avatars, they did the ecosystem they were originally in was in the forest. So they learn how to hunt, they learn how to do all these different things inside the forest. Well, now they're in this new place. So now they have to learn to live like these people if they're going to survive, because ultimately they're trying to have a safe haven for them and their children, because the bad guys essentially are after them. Here's my point. There's a saying that the father, the king basically of the avatars, he told his children to teach these people how to live our lives, essentially how to hunt like us, how to make themselves useful so that they don't suffer the shame of not being useful to the collective, right? So that was such a powerful saying to me, because what it was identifying, which is the truth, because you can even see it in society today, that people don't feel are contributing to the whole of society and making it beneficial, or essentially their contributions aren't, they're not pulling their weight. And that's essentially what he was saying: teach them how to pull their weight so they don't suffer the shame of basically being people that are useless. When you're in environments where people aren't pulling their weight, no one ever is there to glorify the person that is not pulling their share of the weight. When someone is not pulling their share of the weight, they become someone that you don't want to be a part of your group or a part of your clique or whatever it is that you have going on. But let's bring this back to hyper independence. When you are hyper independent, you are essentially saying that nobody around you is useful. So there is an arrogance that people cannot be trusted to do things because they can't do it to the standard or the level in which you want. Now, this is not me saying to you that you shouldn't have standards. This is not me saying to you that there shouldn't be a level of excellence that you desire in things. No. But when that standard is so high and your level of excellence is so high that nobody can qualify, mm, 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 we have a problem there and we need to check it, because either you are completely in the wrong environment, like completely in the wrong environment, or you are an egotistical maniac. Either one is not beneficial for you. Either one is not beneficial for you. Because if you're in the wrong environment and you do genuinely need help, then that means that whatever you need help with can sour because you don't have the adequate amount of help to come help and support you. So if I have a bag of oranges outside and it's the hot sun and I need help getting them into storage, I need some people that are going to go out there and help me move these oranges. But if the people are, let's say lazy, or they are eating the oranges, or they're questioning whether or not this is something that they want to do, or they're intentionally doing one orange at a time, right? How they call it weaponizing competence. There's all these different things that people will do to excuse themselves from being productive. Well, that's a problem if that's the world that you're living your life in. Because if that's the world that you're living your life in, that means whatever gift, whatever purpose, whatever things God puts inside of you, that it's not able to become the thing that God is calling it to be, because you don't have the assistance, right? And you don't have the support to water that thing. That's a problem. So that's one. And then that causes more frustration. And then 9 times out of 10, the people around you aren't going to be the person that's the bad guy. You're going to be the bad guy, because they're going to come together. They're going to create a support group and say, they treat us this way. Oh my gosh, they want so much of us, etc. Right? So that's one part of it. The other part about it is that you genuinely are someone that does not see the good in people. You genuinely are someone that does not see the quality of people. And really, if you're not looking in a mirror that looks like you, then people are no one. They are useless to you. If they can't do things to perfection, they're essentially, what's the point? They're useless. That's a horrible, hopefully I will pray that the ladies in my tribe, that's not you guys. In a lot of ways, for me, it was an environmental issue. However, I will say this, I was not being proactive about putting myself in a better environment. And this is where hyper independence can enter in your life different ways. It can be through conditioning, meaning you were conditioned to be hyper independent. When I became hyper independent, that was the first way it was introduced into me, through conditioning. I am one of 13 brothers and sisters, something like that. I don't know. I have to use my fingers and my toes to count. Okay. I am one of, I think, 12 or 13 brothers and sisters, and I am the middle child. So I was the one that was kind of like the diplomatic one, constantly keeping the peace, communicating to the olders what the youngers are saying, communicating to the younger people what the older people were saying. It was that kind of thing going on. So that kind of created this hyper independence in me, because my parents leaned on me a lot. I have immigrant parents, that whole bit. So that was the beginning of me getting into hyper independence. Well, then certain traumas began to happen in my life. And maybe that was the beginning of me being independent. Let me say that. But then as certain traumas began to happen in my life, it took that independence and it kicked it into overdrive. And before I knew it, that independence that I had turned into hyper independence. I became, deathly afraid, in a sense, of people not taking care of me. And if I didn't believe that people would take care of me, my heart, my mind, my body, etc., there's no way they're going to take care of this thing that matters to me. I had just simply adopted the mindset, if it must be, it's up to me. If it must be, it's up to me. And simply not counting on people so I wouldn't have to be disappointed and have to deal with all that. However, what it did is throughout the years, it created isolation, because the more and more and more you think if it must be is up to me, the more isolated you're going to become because the less and less use you have for people. Now, what's really going to drive you into isolation is if, back it up here, if you are someone that still is struggling with certain insecurities, meaning you feel like validation is still something you struggle with, people pleasing is still something you struggle with, recognition is still something you struggle with. You can be extremely hyper independent and still maintain community with people, relationships with people, because they're feeding that part of you, that need of you. So you need validation, you need recognition, you need those things. So you continue to stay in your hyper independent role, even though you have a belief system, if it must be, it's up to me, but you allow people to, in a sense, put their stuff on you in that way because it feeds something in you. So I don't care how much you complain and how much you say, oh my gosh, they always need me. They always want me. Everybody's always calling on me, et cetera. The reason you're picking up the phone and the reason you're coming, because when it's all said and done, there's a little bit of a dopamine hit you get when someone says, oh my gosh, thank you so much. You were able to do it. Oh, how can it, if it wasn't for you, where would I be, et cetera. So that feeds your ego and it feeds the part of you that are insecure. So when you go through your own personal growth process and you begin to deal with that part of you, you no longer are people pleasing, you no longer are dealing with that need for validation, that need for recognition, you begin to find that your hyper independence actually wasn't serving you. It wasn't serving a purpose, because then you begin to find that in that certain stage of your life, the reason you were utilizing that hyper independence so much was to gain the people pleasing and all of that. Now, some people, their hyper independence, it is structured in a way where it's 100% for success. Those people, oftentimes, it's the hardest when it comes to releasing that hyper independence because the amount of success you're able to accumulate for it. So we can be hyper independent for different reasons. I'm hyper independent to, get recognition and feel love and things like that from people. You're hyper independent because stability, security, all of these things are so important to you. So it drives you into hyper independence to make sure you have it for yourself, because maybe you experienced poverty when you were much younger, et cetera. And what had the biggest impact on you and traumatized you the most was the poverty itself. Whereas other people, what may have traumatized them the most was not feeling love or feeling abandoned or feeling neglected, feeling not protected, right? So there's different reasons why we might go into hyper independence, and then we go into hyper independence thinking that hyper independence is going to solve that thing. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're going to wear ourselves down. Not only will we wear ourselves out in relationships with people, but we'll wear ourselves down when it comes to relationships with ourselves. So when you understand that at the core of this hyper independence, ultimately it's because you believe that something doesn't exist. And ultimately, at the end of the day, isn't lack saying that this particular thing simply does not exist? So you're in a state of mind of lack. And regardless of what you say, well, it really doesn't, etc. Yeah. So now you sound like the people that you may have recognized having a scarcity mindset, and the reasons why they justify, reasons why they're so sure why that lack is present. So now you need to recognize that you within yourself, that you are operating in an attitude, in a mindset where you are so sure that that lack is present. So you're living your life according to the belief that you have that that lack that you see, it is real, 100% real. And not only is it real, it's never going to change. So the only solution is to be hyper independent. Y'all, God did not create us to be that way. That is not God's will. God wants us to be in community. When he talks about the body of Christ, just look at Jesus. If anybody had the right and the authority to be hyper independent, wouldn't it be Jesus? Like, think about it. I have the power to turn water into wine. I have the power to take 2 loaves of bread, 5 fish, feed 5,000 people with it. I have the power to walk on water. I have the power now. Not only can I do this, I have the power to tell you to go to that boat. You were trying to fish, you couldn't catch any fish. So just go ahead and take your net, throw it to the other side, and you have so much fish that you have to go get another boat to get it. And both of the boats basically are starting to sink because there's so much fish in it. I have the power to raise you from the dead. I have the power for you to be dead for 4 days. And here it goes. I'm able to raise you from the dead. I have the power to cure you from something that you've been dealing with for 12 years, going to every single medical professional essentially on this earth, spending every single last dollar you have. And here you go instantly. You don't even have a conversation with me. You just touch me and you're healed. If anybody has the right to operate in hyper independence, it will be Christ Jesus, because he actually can fulfill it all. He can. I can do all this while still ensuring that the earth is still spinning in its course. I can do all of this while still making sure that the mountains are where they need to be, the water, the sand, the seas, everything are where they need to be. I can still do this while still counting all the hairs on your head. If anybody has the right to be that hyper independent, it is God. And yet we are not him. We cannot operate like him. We cannot be on his level. And yet what he says is, he says that, you are my body. There's the head, there's the arms, there's the leg, there's the feet. He still allows us to be a part of his community and still allows us to contribute and have roles and have purposes that we're able to fulfill through him. We are still useful in the grand scheme of everything that he's doing, regardless of the fact that he is all powerful and almighty. So if God, the creator of heaven and earth, who knows he's dealing with imperfect beings, would still allow us to participate, not only that, it's essentially a requirement, because everything he does on earth, he does it through us, these vessels. So if God will still place his precious vision, his precious will, his precious purpose inside of us to be manifested, and we are imperfect beings dealing with a perfect God, how much more us who are imperfect beings dealing with other imperfect people? The ego's just too high. The ego is too high. It's too high. So that is the wake up call that I feel like I was called to give you today. That hyper independence is time to let it go, because it is a scarcity mindset and it's leading to more problems than you really want to have to deal with and face the consequences of. And I think the next episode we'll talk a little bit more about that scarcity mindset and essentially the cycles it can create in your life. With that being said, guys, if hyper independence is really something that you feel like you're struggling with right now, and you're at that point like, oh, okay, God, it's time for me to release it. It's time for me to really do something about this thing. I have a program, Beauty for Ashes. It is all about releasing that survival strength, which hyper independence is one. It is a strength that came merely out of surviving. Releasing that survival strength and embracing divine empowerment. That is essentially the power that comes from the Holy Spirit. It is us leaning on his strength instead of our own, and actually learning how to do this practically. See, I'm one of those people, I don't just like the spiritual talk. No, show me practically how to apply this to my life. So not only is the webinar 3 hours where it really breaks this down to you, but then I have a 21-day guide, a 21-day faith-based transformational guide that makes the walk of releasing it practical, because there's some deep rooted healing that needs to be done there. And you're really going to investigate and really face those things that has you locked in being hyper independent. Because I'm sure you have a vision for your future. I'm sure you have a vision of the way that you want to glow up and the self-care you want and the ease and the flow that you want to do life with. But I'm sorry, if you are too busy being hyper independent, you have some weight on your back. You know how like the songs that go big back, big back. You see, your big bag doesn't necessarily have anything to do with food. Your big bag has to do with the load of things and people and responsibilities and all that stuff that you are carrying. And you are drowning under the weight of your own strength, because you are so convinced that if it must be, is up to me. And I want you to know that that is simply a lie from the pits of hell. And it's a lie that the enemy wants you to believe in so that he can keep you on that hamster wheel exhausted. So get off that hamster wheel, make some time, invest in yourself, and begin going through the process of deconstructing this thing. And don't worry, it's not going to all happen overnight, but I am here to support you and guide you in that journey. And I hope you come back to this channel, because everything that I'm going to be putting out on this channel is going to be about helping women like us heal. So I appreciate you. I love you. I'm really happy that you were able to sit here and listen to this today, especially if you made it this far. You are blessed. I am praying for you. I'm praying for your family and just everything that's on your heart and mind, because trust me, I understand when you're out here and you feel the pressure of this thing. It's like, oh my gosh, you're right. But what can I do, Lord? What am I going to do? You're so right. But what is, you can't see the door. And the reason you can't see the door is because you are at the wall that is for God to separate. And when you sit with him and you learn and you allow him to speak to you, then you can actually do the thing that he's calling you to do in that moment. I'll end with this. I made a video yesterday on my TikTok, and it was about just you're being too strong for your own good. The Lord really had me thinking about the children of Israel and how when they got to the Red Sea, like really think about it, like the walls are closing in on them. So the hyper independent person in that group, what are you going to do? You just got out of Israel, and let's say you really want some freedom. If you really truly want freedom, see, a lot of the Israelites, they were like, listen, we just want to be comfortable. Okay. Well, this channel more so for the people that really truly desire freedom. Well, if you truly desire freedom and you see these Israelites running towards you and you don't know where to go, next thing you know, you're going to be trying to swim across that ocean. You're going to be trying to swim across that sea. And that's what happened with hyper independent people is we do the most silliest things because we are convinced if it must be, it's up to me. We don't stop and say, Lord, I'm in front of a sea right now. The walls are enclosing all around me. My enemies are in pursuit of me. What do I do? And you sit there and you wait for an answer because he's a God that you can trust to answer you. See, the problem is that many of us don't trust that he's a God that's going to answer. He's actually going to deliver us. And that's why we try to deliver ourselves from every single situation. You like that, right? You're like, dang, girl, you ain't have to do that. Yes, I had to tell you that truth. You needed to hear it. You needed to hear it. So you struggle to trust him. And because you struggle to trust him, again, you are going to try to figure it out yourself. But God wants so much better for you. He wants a deeper relationship with you than that, a much deeper relationship with you than that. And my goal and my desire, and I believe my calling that he's given me, is to help you establish that one step at a time. Okay. So, step one today, what are we dealing with? Hyper independence. So I hope you really got some clarity on how you are really, truly, you are beyond knee deep. You are beyond knee deep. You are deep, 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 deep in a scarcity mindset. And it's time to begin doing the things to unravel it, because the life that you want, the life of freedom that you want, it exists in abundance. But how are you going to manifest, or how are you going to bring in, make it tangible, that abundance in your life if you are operating from that mindset? And don't get it confused and get all caught up in thinking that abundance is about the materialism. That's one part of it, but that ain't all of it, right? So if you have all these materialistic things, but you basically are tied to a pretzel because you're constantly on the wheel, hustling and bustling and doing everything, killing your body, that's not achieving what it's supposed to achieve. So we definitely want to operate in wisdom. But again, in order to operate in wisdom, we would have to stop operating on this conditioning or this trauma response. So it's time for you to release that and give it to the Lord. So again, if you're someone that's really serious about this and you feel like, okay, it's time for me to do something, go ahead, click the link below, and you'll get all the information you need to join the program. All right, guys, till next time, y'all have a next day. Bye.